would you like to get the IRS off your back? Fabian Paul Cruz will tell us how to do it. And what's so special about Fabian is that he is a certified tax resolution specialist and founder of CITO Tax Resolution. I hope I pronounced this correctly. So, Fabian, tell us why it's important to get the IRS off your back, and what are the implications of, let's say, the IRS investigating you, and how easy is it to get them off your back, and what needs to be put in place in order to make it happen?
Welcome to Awakened Titans podcast with Lily Patrascu. Mind-blowing conversations with influential business titans sharing how you can manifest abundance, love, joy, success through quantum awakening, quantum manifestation, quantum healing, quantum miracles, exponential business growth, and innovative products and services.
Sure. Well, first off, with the IRS, they are actually the most brutal collection agency in the world. They don't need a court order to seize your accounts. They just turn on the switch and they can take your money from you. You know, they can deplete your savings accounts, your checking accounts. And I always give people this as a perspective as far as their power. If the president of the United States wanted to do any of that, he would have to get a court order. The IRS does not have to. So when it comes to the IRS, you know, you can either decide to ignore it and it only gets worse. And that's one of those problems where the longer it goes, the more difficult it is to get around it. And so what we like to do is we like to get out there and get in front of these problems. And as soon as someone has an issue, we want to address this because it's going to make the most favorable outcome. And now for any of your clients that are watching and they've had issues for years and they haven't addressed them, that doesn't mean that there's not hope, because there's always hope. But unfortunately, you know, this can progress to the point where it would affect your ability to maintain your assets.
Thank you. So tell us, what is your blueprint for someone to first not have a problem with IRS and maybe not get even in the, eyes, I don't know if that's the right word, to get kind of like, to get into a position where they are being investigated by the IRS. What do they need to put in place to make sure that this kind of thing does not happen?
Well, at the simplest level, and this can be for across the board for everybody, is file a tax return. Because a lot of the problems that people end up with in front of the IRS is because they never filed a tax return to begin with. Now, typically, most of the people I deal with are investors, whether they're investing in building out businesses or real estate. And so, you know, and really there's three things we look at as far as the approach to stay out of the crosshairs of the IRS, regardless of asset class you're getting into. The first is we want to find the right entity to put your assets into, you know, and then from there, we want to make sure that with those entities, we're structuring it where there's going to be as much tax mitigation as possible, because, you know, you don't want to pay out more than you have to. And then at that point, with those two together, we come on that with generational wealth planning. Or I shouldn't say we do that. I advise clients at that point, generational wealth planning with utilizing all the different structures that are out there, and then having a really solid person like a CPA, you know, looking out as far as for their interests. You know, don't go at it like with do it yourself home software. You know, have someone where this is their lane and this is where they're focusing.
Thank you. For those people that, let's say, are already in trouble in terms of, you know, being investigated by the IRS, what is the blueprint for them to deal with it effectively so that they clear any potential problem and they are back to, you know, working as usual?
Sure. Well, the first thing I share with everyone is don't be embarrassed. Over 12 million Americans right now, 12 to 13 million Americans right now owe a staggering $125 billion in back taxes. This problem is more common than not. So don't be embarrassed and don't be afraid. There is help out there. And so what we do is, and then the big thing is, don't go at this alone. We've seen so many people come to us where they try to deal with the IRS on their own, and they just dug themselves into such a deeper hole. So whenever we have someone who comes to us who has these issues at a very high level, we take a three-step approach. What we do is we pull their tax transcripts directly from the IRS into our software, and we see what is going on. We want to know exactly what the IRS is looking at. And then from there, what we do is we get them compliant. And that may be, Lily, that may be something as simple as getting some back taxes for the last couple of years. I'm sorry, back tax returns filed and up to date. And then from there, we go into the third phase, which is a permanent tax resolution process. And that could be something as simple as, unfiled tax returns, and then a $30,000 tax debt goes down to a few $100s. It could be something as far as an offer or compromise, where a taxpayer, where we show the IRS, hey, listen, this person is not in a position to pay X amount of dollars. So we'll offer you, like, for example, 11 cents on the dollar. So we're able to do that. And our success rate with offer and compromise, I should say our acceptance rate is double the national average, because of the software we use lets us know, is this person a great candidate or not? And then there's quite a few other different programs in place that we're able to really take advantage of, just depending on what the person's unique situation is.
Wow, that sounds fascinating that you're able to do that. Are there any other mistakes that entrepreneurs in the USA do that land them in high water, that kind of land them in sticky situations with the IRS tax service?
What I've seen from entrepreneurs who come across my desk, what they're really doing is they're taking a lot of advice from social media. And unfortunately, a lot of these people are just seeing the first layer of how to do tax mitigation. They aren't seeing a second, or third, or fourth layer. And then they're getting themselves into a whole lot of trouble. And that's really, where I always drive people is find someone who not only understands the tax code, but is also working as far as the tax mitigation strategies that are out there. Because it's one thing to just, checks and balances. There's a whole nother thing as far as doing estate planning, for that tax mitigation.
Thank you. What else would you like entrepreneurs to know who need to file taxes in the US that they typically don't know about?
Sure. So, before we got on, we were talking about how you're overseas. Now, especially since COVID, I'm seeing more and more entrepreneurs who have a global footprint. We have a lot of nomad entrepreneurs. And what they're being told is, well, if I go to this country, I won't have as high of a tax rate. And what I share with a lot of these, if you're still an American citizen, you're still subject to that being taxed as a U.S. citizen. So that's one of the first things I point out if I'm dealing with someone who's overseas and still an American citizen.
Thank you. Tell us 3 case studies of entrepreneurs you've helped with IRS issues that have managed to get a good result, and tell us some specifics of what worked and why.
Sure. So my absolute favorite case, Lily, is we had a farmer who came to us. He owed $300,000 in back taxes. And this farmer owned 3 businesses: a farm, a trucking company, and a harvesting company. And the way that $300,000 came about is his wife was dealing with cancer. He sold part of his farm in order to pay for her treatment. Unfortunately, she succumbed to her cancer, and then he was hit with this $300,000 in capital gains tax. Well, we were able to go to the IRS and say, hey, listen, yes, this individual has 3 businesses, has enough money in the bank to cover that debt with IRS. But the thing is, this money is already earmarked for his business. So the IRS said, okay, we're going to go into what's called a do not collect, cannot collect situation, where they won't collect anything. And what's great about this individual is what they did right. They did a lot of things right. One of the main things is they filed their tax returns. And why this is important in a case like this is the statute of limitations, the clock starts going. So over the next 3 years, starting right now, a third of each of that amount is going to drop off. So in 3 years, this is going to be completely gone. So that's one of my favorite cases because it really shows people like, and I share this with people, don't be embarrassed because people who are dealing with the IRS are not someone who's running a Ponzi scheme or something out of a back alley. They're everyday people who just had some kind of, circumstances out of their control go crazy. Now, a second story that I always like to share with people is why you should not go at this alone. We had this very successful sales manager come to us, owed roughly $120,000 in back taxes. The IRS came knocking on his door. He answered the door, which was his first mistake in that situation. And then he ended up dealing with the IRS on his own. And he agreed to a number of things that he didn't totally really understand. And it actually doubled his tax debt all the way up almost to $300,000. And right there, the way we were able to help him is he was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to file bankruptcy. So what we were able to do is pull in his tax transcripts. We found that of that $300,000, only $12,000 was eligible for a bankruptcy discharge. So we're able to prevent him from having a bankruptcy and dealing with that on his record and this large amount of tax debt to just being able to bypass that bankruptcy altogether and addressing that tax debt. So those are two of my favorite stories. And the third one is we had a call on, I'll never forget this, on a Tuesday, and we had this business owner, very successful woman, owned 7 businesses, everything from a repossession, vehicle repossession, to a parking lot business, to a software company. And the IRS told her that she had to come up with $50,000 by Thursday, or they were putting the locks on the door of one of her businesses. We're able to go in there, figure out what exactly was going on, and we're able to get that $50,000 pushed out for 90 days in order to see what was going on. And fortunately, once we're able to really dig in and see what the exact issue is, we're able to help her get this completely straightened out. And she still has all 7 of her businesses, and they're all thriving.
Thank you. Tell us, how expensive is it to hire you to solve all of these very complex problems for entrepreneurs dealing with IRS issues?
Here's the great thing is we don't charge by the hour because there's a lot of research that can go into a case. And so what we found the best thing to do was once we pull those tax transcripts and we see exactly what's going on, we know exactly what needs to get done. And that's how we charge a client. So that way it maintains it caps the cost, if you will. So there's no hidden bills that are going to come up.
Thank you.
So it's yeah.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, so when you're
yes,
I apologize. So whenever you're looking for a solution to a $300,000 problem, if you can settle it for a few $1,000s, that trade-off is the return on that investment is great.
Yes, I fully agree. What else would you like entrepreneurs to know about solving problems related to their IRS taxes?
Sure. The most important thing I drive home is don't ignore this, because what happens as an entrepreneur, one of your tools to grow your business is accessing capital. If you end up with a lien and due to filing taxes or not paying your taxes, you're going to lose access to be able to get a lien or be able to get a loan, because that information becomes public. So what I like to share with everyone, give us a call immediately so we can get involved. So if a lien is coming or if a lien is in place, we can get it removed. And that way you can get access to capital and we can start working on your behalf to get rid of that tax debt or find a solution to it.
Thank you. What are the worst things that can happen? Imagine you have a really big debt with IRS. How can that impact your life and your business?
Sure. Well, the first case is that lien where the IRS takes first position on your property. It could turn into a levy. And this is a worst case scenario where they actually force the sale of that property. That's a very extreme example of what could happen. Fortunately, most people aren't getting there at this point right now, especially with the reduction as far as funding for the IRS. But here's what's really going to happen in the very near future for people is first off, it's going again, it becomes public information. So it's going to limit your access to be able to get loans to grow your business. That's every business owner I know utilizes a loan as a tool to grow their business. But here's the second thing: I deal with a lot of real estate entrepreneurs who are either they're doing syndications or they're doing like the Burr method, buy, rehab, rent out, refinance. And what happens is whenever you go to apply for like a personal loan, like an individual loan where they do a hard money loan, for those investors that I'm finding who are really prudent, they not only look at the numbers of a deal, they look at the person behind the deal. And so they're pulling credit reports, they're looking at tax returns, and they're doing background checks. So if you're going out and you're trying to raise money for like an apartment syndication, and someone starts looking at you and you have a tax lien against you, well, an investor is going to say, well, if this person can't budget their finances and handle their own finances, why would I write them a $50,000 check or greater? So it's going to impact your credibility also.
Thank you. Tell us about your experience with, tax resolutions. How did you get into this business, and what did you personally manage to achieve as a result?
Sure. So this is a story that hits really close to home. A number of years ago, I received a phone call from my mom, and she was so upset, Lily. And finally, once she calmed down, I started talking to her. Here's what happened. The IRS had just notified my parents that they owed a significant amount in back taxes. Once we started looking, we realized this was really not any fault to their own. They took very poor tax planning advice from their tax preparer. And so what we did was, and I had no background whatsoever, so we went out and we found someone who specializes in tax resolution. And here's the thing, Lily, dealing with them was just as stressful as dealing with the IRS. Because every time a letter came in, we would call them. We talked to somebody new every time we called in. And then with that, they would always have to say, we'll get back to you. Well, if we're lucky, they'd get back in 24, 48 hours. It's typically a week later. And you have a letter in your hand, you don't totally understand what it's saying. A week later, that's a scary time to wait. So there's no call continuum. And so after fortunately, we were able to get my parents completely situated. We were able to get a favorable result. And I started to take a look at this and I was like, with my experience in corporate America, everything I've learned, I think I could do this better. So I started researching and figured out what it took to actually be successful in this industry, as far as the certifications and then building out a back office. And I went for it. It's great as we are growing faster than I could ever believe. And that's actually the genesis of our company. And my mom, she would always say during this whole time, I just want my life back. And that's actually inspired the tagline of our company is, you deserve your life back.
Thank you. For digital nomads that, let's say, are partially living in the UK and partially living in the US and partially living in, I don't know, Dubai or another hot country, what are the types of things that investors or, let's say, entrepreneurs don't know about making money in the US and the taxes that are due there?
Sure. So are they still American citizens?
Let's say they are not American citizens.
Okay.
But they are making money in the US.
Okay. Well, then, yes, then you will be subject. So you will only be subject to the money that you make in the US as far as taxation under the IRS. Any money made outside of the US, you will not be subject under the US. But to whatever country that they're currently in or doing business in, they would be subject to their taxation system.
Thank you. What about digital nomads that are American citizens and that partially live in the US and other countries? Is there a different rule about taxation that entrepreneurs should be aware of?
So yes, so they're 100% of what they make if they're an American citizen and they're overseas, will be subject to the IRS taxation system. And then as far as what country they're in, that's a big variable. Just to say, and I hate to use this for your clients, but this is something I had to get comfortable with in this industry. Here's the answer. It depends. There's just so many variables with the second part of that question.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can connect with you.
Sure. So, if any of your viewers found any of this information helpful, they're going to love this. I've created a scorecard where a person can go in, answer 13 short questions about their tax situation and how they're feeling emotionally. And they're not only going to get a score to see what's going on, it's going to give them some helpful hints as far as what they should be doing. And people can find this on my website. It'll pop up immediately at CITO Tax, that's CITO Tax, TAX.com. And then also my toll-free number is 1-877 CITO Tax.
Thank you. Tell us one last thing. What are some of the worst situations you've seen people get into because of IRS taxations, aside from everything you talked about?
Marriage is lost. So that's to me, that, losing a house is one thing, but losing a partner, that's a whole nother thing. And I've had numerous, and I'll just use this as an example. A husband, very successful in his construction business. He dealt with all the finances. His wife didn't know, she had no part in the finances whatsoever. And then calls started coming, letters, and then finally it was something he couldn't hide anymore. And the amount that he owed was staggering. And she was like, deal with it or this is over. And so with her, we were able to put her what's called into innocent spouse relief because they filed jointly, and he lost his family. So to me, that's the worst thing that could happen to an individual, is losing their family over something that could have been easily addressed.
Thank you. And one unrelated thing, what do you think is the secret to your success? I mean, you're clearly a great communicator. You seem like an expert in your topic, which is tax resolutions. And
Yes,
what would you say is the key thing that kind of brought you to where you are now?
Well, aside from, looking back on my past experience and seeing how that would really make sense as far as launching my own business, I think what's really catapulted us is, I created a plan, I teamed up. So that's one of the things I've seen people, at least in tax resolution, why they've stayed small, is they try to do everything on their own. I am not afraid to spend money. Like I don't deal with IT stuff. There's a lot of people out there who are great with IT stuff. I'd rather throw money at it and focus on what I do best, which is dealing with clients. And then also execute, have a plan, team up, and execute. And for me, that has really been the secret to our success is, just going for it and making sure I have all the right team members in place, not being a solopreneur.
Thank you.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential business titans, providing you with the insights to awaken to your full potential so you can get paid to be yourself, find true happiness, and manifest anything you desire.